Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. The Women's Prize for Fiction Longlist has just been announced. Like I said in the Booker Prize video, I haven't really read a lot of brand new publications last year, so I don't really have any predictions, and I don't think I've read any of these entries on this list. So today I thought we would just take a look at the award nominees and just go through the synopsis and see if any of these titles would interest me to pick up, whether to purchase it or to borrow it from a library. Let's go. So the Women's Prize website has listed these in alphabetical order by author surname. So let's go through them in the same order. The first one is Good Girl by Aria Aber. In Berlin's underground, where techno rattles buildings still scarred with the violence of the last century, 19-year-old Nila finds her tribe. In their company, she can escape the parallel city that made her, the public housing block packed with refugees and immigrants, where the bathrooms are infested with silverfish and the walls outside are graffitied with swastikas. Escaping into the clubs, Nila tries to outrun the shadow of her dead mother, once a feminist revolutionary, her catatonic, defeated father, and the cab driver uncles who seem to idle on every corner. To anyone who asks, her family is Greek, not Afghani. And then Nila meets American writer Marlowe Woods, whose literary celebrity, though fading, opens her eyes to a world of patrons and festivals, one that imbues her dreams of life as an artist with new possibility. But as she finds herself drawn further into his orbit, and ugly, barely submerged tensions begin to roil and claw beneath the city's cosmopolitan veneer, everything she hopes for, hates, and believes about herself will be challenged. So this sounds like a coming-of-age story of a young girl who experienced a lot of, the dark sides of urban life, and she tried to escape into this world of celebrity artists and writers, and finding a lot of tension roiling beneath the surface. The next title I have heard a lot of during the past year or so. This is The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. I've heard this recommended by a lot of booktubers, and some people have mixed feelings, mixed reviews about it as well. So here's the synopsis. In the near future, a disaffected civil servant is offered a lucrative job in a mysterious new government ministry, gathering expats from across history to test the limits of time travel. Her role is to work as a bridge, living with, assisting, and monitoring the expat known as 1847, Commander Graham Gore. As far as history is concerned, Commander Gore died on Sir John Franklin's doomed expedition to the Arctic, so he's a little disoriented to find himself alive and surrounded by outlandish concepts such as washing machines, Spotify, and the collapse of the British Empire. With an appetite for discovery and a 7-a-day cigarette habit, he soon adjusts. And during a long, sultry summer, he and his bridge move from awkwardness to genuine friendship to something more. But as the true shape of the project that brought them together begins to emerge, Gore and the bridge are forced to confront their past choices and imagined futures. Can love triumph over the structures and histories that have shaped them? And how do you defy history when history is living in your house? So the protagonist is kind of obligated to work with someone that's literally from the past, and they don't understand a lot of the things that are in the present, and she has to kind of explain everything to him and bridge his outdated worldviews with our current world. So this one I am kind of curious about, purely because I have heard about it so much. It's one of those cultural phenomenons, where we feel like we need to know it just to keep up, if that makes sense. However, I don't know if this is like a sci-fi story or if it's really romance that's just disguised with a sci-fi-ish premise, kind of like, how there's romantasy where it's like a fantasy universe, but really it's a romance novel. I don't know if this is like the sci-fi equivalent of that. So I'm not sure that's the reading experience I would want personally. This one's a maybe. Next is Somewhere Else by Jenni Daiches. Rosa Roshkin is 5 years old when her family are murdered in a pogrom, and she is forced to leave behind everything she knows with only a suitcase of clothes and her father's violin. An epic generational novel about womanhood and Judeo-Scottish experience across two world wars, the creation of Israel, and the fall of the Berlin Wall. Jenni Daiches' Somewhere Else explores today's most difficult and urgent questions, not least of which, how to find identity in displacement. This one sounds very interesting to me. I think out of the few that I've read so far, this is currently a front runner personally, just in terms of what I would want to pick up and read. There's a multi-generational story, there is historical background of the world wars, and it looks like it's incorporating a lot of major modern geopolitical events into this novel. So this could be a very interesting read. The next one, I'm not quite sure the correct pronunciation for the title or the author's name. I think it's Amma by Saraid de Silva. I really don't know how to find out the correct answer for that. I'm not sure what language this name is in. Okay, here's the story. 1951 Singapore. 10-year-old Josefina kills her abuser. This event becomes the defining moment in the lives of Josefina, her daughter Sithara, and their granddaughter Annie. The effects cascade through generations as Annie sets out across the world to discover what happened to fracture her family. Set in Sri Lanka, Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, and London, Amma is a novel about how the past lives with us forever and wherever we are. Written in sensuous, vivid prose, Amma is a story of the rich history and unknown future of the Sri Lankan diaspora, and of one family desperately trying to find peace. So this synopsis has a real like international Booker Prize kind of feel to it, but I think that one acknowledges translated works, and the Women's Prize are for works that are originally written in English, and I'm sure this novel is. So starting from the sentence, a 10-year-old kills her abuser, I immediately just want to go buy this book right now. And it's got this multicultural background. I know nothing about 1951 Singapore, and I would absolutely love to find out. So I think this one is going to end up on my bookshelf soon. Crooked Seeds by Karen Jennings. Deirdre is a victim of her family, her society, her history. That is how she sees herself, and so she feels free of all obligations, moral and practical. Until the police takes her back to her family home in a Cape Town where water is rationed and has to be collected from trucks each day, with the consequences of apartheid and the ending of it still evident. Deirdre lives from day to day in squalor, largely created by herself, borrowing, persuading, cadging her way from the water trucks to the bar, testing the tolerance and pity of everyone she knows. Then she is contacted by the police and taken by a respectable constable to the house where she grew up and where she lost her leg in a shattering explosion while still young. Faced with what is found there, she has to accept the truth of her past and of her older brother, her parents' golden boy. Then she must confront herself and her responsibility and what it truly is to be a victim. So it looks like this novel might be kind of examining the psychology of self-victimization. So this girl grew up in difficulty. The world that she lives in is still very harsh. Water is rationed. She's lost a leg, and her parents clearly prefer her brother. So then she has to kind of confront this kind of mentality that she has. So I'm hoping to see some character growth from this premise. I think if this character is just like trapped in this mentality of victimization, that's quite sad, and I'm not sure that would be an enjoyable story. The next title I've heard of a lot, and I'm sure you've heard of a lot as well. This is All Force by Miranda July. This book is another one that's very hyped. I guess you can say it's kind of like a viral book, and I have definitely seen quite mixed reviews about this one already. Let's just read the synopsis. A semi-famous artist announces her plan to drive across country from LA to NY. 30 minutes after leaving her husband and child at home, she spontaneously exits the freeway, beds down in a nondescript motel, and immerses herself in a temporary reinvention that turns out to be the start of an entirely different journey. Miranda July's second novel confirms the brilliance of her unique approach to fiction, with July's wry voice, perfect comic timing, unabashed curiosity about human intimacy, and palpable delight in pushing boundaries. All Force tells the story of one woman's quest for a new kind of freedom. Part absurd entertainment, part tender reinvention of the sexual, romantic, and domestic life of a 45-year-old female artist, All Force transcends expectations while excavating our beliefs about life lived as a woman. Once again, July hijacks the familiar and turns it into something new and thrillingly, profoundly alive. I think if this novel achieves everything that is said here, that it's entertaining and inventive and transcending expectations, then sure, it would be a great book. But this premise just doesn't really sound like something that I would read, unfortunately. The Dream Hotel by Laila Lalami. Sarah is returning home from a conference abroad where agents from the Risk Assessment Administration pull her aside at the airport. Using data from her dreams, their algorithm has determined that she is at imminent risk of harming her husband. For his safety, she must be transferred to a retention center and kept under observation for 21 days. But as Sarah arrives to be monitored alongside other dangerous dreamers, she discovers that with every deviation from the facility's strict and ever-shifting rules, their stays can be extended, and that getting home to her family is going to cost much more than just 3 weeks of good behavior. The Dream Hotel is a gripping speculative mystery about the seductive dangers of the technologies that are supposed to make our lives easier. As terrifying as it is inventive, it explores how well we can ever truly know those around us, even with the most invasive surveillance systems in place. This one has got a really Orwellian quality to it. I would be very interested to read this one. This sounds like a thought crime decided by AI kind of premise, which is terrifying. Yeah, this is another one that I'm very eager to pick up. The Persians by Sanam Mahloudji. Meet the women of the Valiyat family. In Iran, they were somebodies. In America, they are nobodies. First, there is Elizabeth, the regal matriarch with the famously large nose, who remained in Tehran despite the revolution. She is kept company by Niaz, her young Islamic law-breaking granddaughter. In America, Elizabeth's 2 daughters have built new lives for themselves. There's Shirin, a flamboyant, high-flying event planner in Houston, who considers herself the family's future. And Seema, a dreamy idealist turned bored housewife languishing in Los Angeles. And then there's the other granddaughter, Beta, a disillusioned law student in New York, trying to find deeper meaning by giving away her worldly belongings. When an annual vacation in Aspen goes wildly awry and Shirin ends up being bailed out of jail by Beta, the family's brittle upper-class veneer is cracked wide open, and gossip about them spreads like wildfire. Soon, Shirin must embark upon a grand quest to restore the family name to its former glory. But what does that mean in a country where the Valiyats never mattered to anyone? And will reputation be enough to make them a family again? Spanning from the 1940s Iran into a splintered 2000s, The Persians is an irresistible portrait of a unique family in crisis that explores timeless questions of love, money, art, and fulfillment. Here is their past, their present, and a possible new future for them all. This one looks like it would have some interesting characters with like very diverging personalities. They are kind of like a rich family, but they're displaced in a completely different country and different culture. They're kind of trying to find themselves again, I guess. Dream Count by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I think this is the one that has the controversy regarding the author being transphobic, so that's not great. But yeah, but it's chosen for the prize, so let's just look at the synopsis, otherwise the list would be incomplete. Chiamaka is a Nigerian travel writer living in America. Alone in the midst of the pandemic, she recalls her past lovers and grapples with her choices and regrets. Zikora, her best friend, is a lawyer who has been successful at everything until, betrayed and brokenhearted, she must turn to the person she thought she needed least. Amilogor, Chiamaka's bold, outspoken cousin, is a financial powerhouse in Nigeria who begins to question how well she knows herself. And Kariatu, Chiamaka's housekeeper, is proudly raising her daughter in America, but faces an unthinkable hardship that threatens all she has worked to achieve. I don't think I will read this one, but yeah, in case you were curious, that's the synopsis. Nesting by Roisín O'Donnell. An extraordinary and urgent debut by a prize-winning Irish writer, Nesting introduces an unforgettable new voice in fiction. On a bright spring afternoon in Dublin, Ciara Fahey makes a split-second decision that will change everything. Grabbing an armful of clothes from the washing line, Ciara straps her 2 young daughters into her car and drives away. Head spinning, all she knows for certain is that home is no longer safe. This was meant to be an escape, but with dwindling savings, no job, and her family across the sea, Ciara finds herself adrift, facing a broken housing system and the voice of her own demons. As summer passes and winter closes in, she must navigate raising her children in a hotel room, searching for a new home, and dealing with her husband Ryan's relentless campaign to get her to come back. Because leaving is one thing, but staying away is another. What will it take for Ciara to rebuild her life? Can she ever truly break away from Ryan's control, and what will be the cost? Tense, beautiful, and underpinned by an unassailable love, hope, and resilience, this is the story of one woman's bid to start over. I feel like Irish writers just never disappoint. This is also another story about kind of escaping the status quo, rebuilding your identity, and kind of starting over. But this sounds so much more interesting to me than All Fours, so I think I would go for this one. A Little Trickery by Rosanna Pike. Born a vagabond, Tib Ingleby has never had a roof of her own, but her mother has taught her that if you're not too bound by the big man's rules, there are many ways a woman can find shelter in this world. Now her ma is dead in a trick gone wrong, and young Tib is orphaned and alone. As she wends her way across the fields and forests of medieval England, Tib will discover there are people who will care for her, as well as those who mean her harm. And there are a great many others who are prepared to believe just about anything. And so, when the opportunity presents itself to escape the shackles society has placed on them, Tib and her new friends conjure an audacious plan, her greatest trickery yet. But before they know it, their hoax takes on a life of its own, drawing crowds and vengeful enemies to their door. A Little Trickery is blazingly original, disarmingly funny, and deeply moving. Portraying a side of Tudor England rarely seen, it's a tale of belief and superstition, kinship and courage, with a ragtag cast of characters and an unforgettable and distinctly unangelic heroine. I think the fields and forests of medieval England is already very interesting to me. A ragtag cast of characters and an unforgettable and distinctly unangelic heroine also sounds great. It sounds like a roguish character having sort of adventures and misadventures in a medieval setting. So yeah, this is another one that's very interesting to me. Birding by Roisín. In a small seaside town, autumn is edging into winter. Gulls ride winds over the waves, and 2 women pass each other on the promenade, as yet unaware of each other's existence. In the 90s, Lydia was a teen pop star, posed half-naked on billboards everywhere with a lollipop between her lips and no idea how to live, letting the world happen to her. Now, 3 decades later, Lydia is less and less sure that what happened to her was in the least bit okay. The news cycle runs hot with #MeToo stories, and a famous former lover has emerged with a self-serving apology asking her to forgive him. Suddenly, the past is full of trapdoors she is desperately trying not to fall through. Joyce, in middle age, has never left home. She still lives with her mother, Betty. With their matching dresses, identical hairdos, and makeup, they are the local oddballs. Theirs is a life of unerring routine. The shops, biscuits served on bone china plates, dressed up for a gin and tonic on Saturday. Nice things. One misstep from Joyce can ruin Betty's day. So Joyce treads carefully. She has never let herself think about a different kind of life, but recently, along with the hot flushes, something like anger is asserting itself, like a caged thing realizing it should probably try and escape. Amid the gray skies, amusement parks, and beauty parlors of a gentrifying rundown seaside resort, these 2 women might never meet. But as they both try to untangle the demanding details of their past in the hope of a better future, their lives are set on an unlikely collision course. With mordant wit and lyrical prose, Birding asks us if we can ever see ourselves clearly, or if we are always the unreliable narrators of our own experiences. It is a story about the difference between responsibility and obligation, unhealthy relationships and abusive ones, third acts and last chances, and two women trying to take flight on clipped wings. So a former pop star who is trying to reconcile with what happened to her when she is at a later stage in life, and a middle-aged woman who's never left home and still lives with her mother. And these two characters somehow come together on a collision course. I mean, the mordant wit and lyrical prose sounds great, but unfortunately this premise isn't the most interesting to me. The Artist by Lucy Steeds, Provence, 1920. Etty moves through the remote farmhouse, silently creating the conditions that make her uncle's artistic genius possible. Joseph, an aspiring journalist, has been invited to the house. He believes he'll make his name by interviewing the reclusive painter, the great Edouard Tartuffe. But everyone has their secrets, and under the cover of darkness, Etty has spent years cultivating hers. Over this sweltering summer, everyone's true colors will be revealed, because Etty is ready to be seen, even if it means setting her world on fire. This synopsis is kind of vague, but I think I've seen an article about this author, and there's like a bidding war for the rights of this novel. So there's an article in The Guardian that tells you a little bit more about this book. So the uncle, Edouard, who is the artist, he is apparently like very hostile and kind of difficult, and he keeps Etty, the niece, as kind of like a prisoner. And while staying with them, Joseph discovers that there are a lot of secrets in their lives, such as where does Etty go at night and what happened to her parents. So this sounds like a very interesting story. I mean, 1920 sounds great. Provence sounds great. So this is a maybe for me. I will put this one probably slightly behind the Dream Hotel, just in my personal preference list, but it's definitely something that I would pick up and read. Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout. A hopeful, healing novel about new friendships, old loves, and the very human desire to leave a mark on the world from the Pulitzer Prize-winning Women's Prize longlisted author. It's autumn in Maine, and the town lawyer Bob Burgess has become enmeshed in an unfolding murder investigation, defending a lonely, isolated man accused of killing his mother. He has also fallen into a deep and abiding friendship with the acclaimed writer Lucy Barton, who lives nearby in a house next to the sea. Together, Lucy and Bob talk about their lives, their hopes and regrets, and what might have been. Lucy, meanwhile, befriends one of Crosby's longest inhabitants, Olive Kitteridge, now living in a retirement community on the edge of town. They spend afternoons together in Olive's apartment, telling each other stories. Stories about people they have known, unrecorded lives, Olive calls them, reanimating them, and, in the process, imbuing their lives with meaning. Brimming with empathy and pathos, Tell Me Everything is Elizabeth Strout operating at the height of her powers, illuminating the ways in which our relationships keep us afloat. And Lucy says, love comes in so many different forms, but it is always love. I have heard mixed opinions about this author, Elizabeth Strout. I've heard a few reviewers say that her writing style is very beautiful, and someone else say that it's just too slow-paced and kind of excruciating. So I'm not sure what to expect for this one. But Seaside Town does sound nice, but just the people and the relationships described in this premise are not really my personal favorite. This premise looks to me just like it's a few people talking about other people, and I don't see any overarching mystery or tension or that kind of thing that would really draw me in. So this might be a pass for me, unfortunately. This next one I have also heard about a lot over the past year or so. This is The Safekeep by Yale Vander Uden. An exhilarating tale of twisted desire, histories, and homes, and the unexpected shape of revenge for readers of Patricia Highsmith, Sarah Waters, and Ian McEwan's Atonement. It is 15 years after the Second World War, and Isabel has built herself a solitary life of discipline and strict routine in her late mother's country home, with not a fork or a word out of place. But all is upended when her brother Louis delivers his graceless new girlfriend Eva at Isabel's doorstep as a guest, there to stay for the season. In the sweltering heat of summer, Isabel's desperate need for control reaches boiling point. What happens between the two women leads to a revelation which threatens to unravel all she has ever known. Just looking at the available information here, I think the historical setting is the most interesting part of this to me personally. Kind of the clashing of someone and her brother's girlfriend. I don't really see myself spending 10-15 hours reading about someone clashing with her brother's girlfriend. So yeah, that's that. Fundamentally by Nusaibah Yunus. By normal, you mean like you? A slag with a savior complex? Well, that's rude. Nadia is an academic who's been disowned by her puritanical mother and dumped by her lover, Rosie. She decides to make a getaway, accepting a UN job in Iraq. Tasked with rehabilitating ISIS women, Nadia becomes mired in the opaque world of international aid, surrounded by bumbling colleagues. Sarah is a precocious and sweary East Londoner who joined ISIS at just 15. Nadia is struck by how similar they are. Both feisty and opinionated from a Muslim background, with a shared love of dairy milk and rude pickup lines. A powerful friendship forms between the two women until a secret confession from Sarah threatens everything Nadia has been working for. A bitingly original, wildly funny, and razor-sharp exploration of love, family, religion, and the decisions we make in pursuit of belonging fundamentally upends and explores a defining controversy of our age with heart, complexity, and humor. This premise sounds a lot more interesting to me than the previous few that we read. I have no idea what to expect with the rehabilitating ISIS women task. But bitingly original, wildly funny, and razor sharp sounds amazing to me. I think this one will definitely be a fun read. So looking at this list, if I were to choose kind of a personal TBR from these 16, I think it would be Amma by Saraid de Silva. That's the one that's set in 1950s Singapore. The Dream Hotel by Laila Lalami. That's the AI-determined thought crime, like possibility of harming her husband thing. I think it might be Nesting by Roisín O'Donnell. That's the Irish story of escaping and reinventing oneself and finding new identity. Maybe A Little Trickery, that's the medieval England one, kind of like a women's swashbuckling kind of story. Maybe Fundamentally also by Nusaibah Yunus. That's the one that we just looked at, that's about rehabilitating ISIS women. Possibly The Artist by Lucy Steeds as well. So that was the 2025 Women's Prize for Fiction longlist. There are some very interesting entries on this list. Quite a few of them definitely piqued my interest. I think I will be shopping or borrowing from libraries in the next couple months. Please let me know in the comments below what you think of this list, which novels on this list are most interesting to you, and what you think of my selection. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.